Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, January 13. I'm Giovanni Dennis with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're joining us online at onespotmedia.com. The Jamaica Constabulary Force says the decision to publicize the major gun and ammunition seizure at the Freeport Wharf in St. James on Monday was strategic. The response comes in the wake of criticisms from some social media users that they could have caught the perpetrators by awaiting the collection of the shipment. U.S. law enforcement agencies are assisting local police to track down the people responsible. 19 firearms and over 470 assorted rounds of ammunition were among the items seized. Communication officer for the JCF, Senior Superintendent Stephanie Lindsay, says the decision to announce the seizure was not made lightly.
I can understand people will say that, but remember, these guns are being shipped by persons who are involved in organized criminal network, so they know exactly what they're doing. So you have to calculate the risk of keeping it there, and then next thing you know, something goes wrong, or you find the guns and you take them in your custody, secure them so you're sure they don't get out there, and you do the investigation. So the team that's working on it, they knew exactly why they took possession of the guns.
And still in the West, the Trelawny police say they are making headway into the case involving the killing of 4-year-old Chloe Brown in Freeman's Hall on Monday. Head of the Trelawny Police, Superintendent Kirk Ricketts, says the suspects taken into custody in relation to the killing are expected to be charged soon. Now, 3 people, including a relative of the child, are in custody in connection with the case. Superintendent Ricketts says the investigation is advanced.
We're just asking, the residents to allow us to do our job and not to take them, anything in their own hands. I think the police is adequately equipped to deal with this matter. I am very satisfied with the progress of the investigation, and we believe that we might be able to lay charges soon.
Now, it's reported that shortly after 1 o'clock Monday morning, Chloe and her father were at home when he was called outside. When he opened the door, there was a tussle and he was shot in the leg. Chloe was shot in the abdomen. Opposition spokesman on national security, Senator Peter Bunting, is again calling on the government to put forward a suitable crime-fighting plan. This follows a statement from the Prime Minister suggesting that the country would have seen a greater reduction in crime if there were longer states of emergency. Prince Moore reports.
The People's National Party, PNP, will not support further routine use of the state of public emergency as a crime-fighting tool. That's the declaration from opposition spokesman on national security, Senator Peter Bunting.
Whenever a state of emergency is declared and it comes to Parliament to be extended, we will have to examine the circumstances that would have triggered that at the time. But in terms of supporting what has now been deemed unconstitutional and ineffective serial and routine use of states of emergency as crime fighting, opposition cannot be a part of that.
Senator Bunting says the Prime Minister's continued reliance on the state of public emergency indicates he's out of ideas on how to solve the country's crime problems. He also criticized the government for comments about the effectiveness of the SOEs.
They suggest that if you want the police and security forces in any numbers in your community, you need a state of emergency. That is a lie.
Senator Bunting says the government has not productively made use of the national security budget.
The murder and shooting statistics have been considerably higher than any year between 2012 and 2015, when we used no states of emergency and had much fewer, a tiny fraction of the resources that has been spent on national security in recent years.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
The College of Agriculture, Science and Education, CASE, has responded to concerns raised by students about financial constraints to board at the school and face-to-face assessments. The school, which facilitates student teachers, says it has been working in the best interest of its students. Sandy Williams has been tracking this story.
A story aired on TVJ News on Tuesday highlighted concerns raised by student teachers at the College of Agriculture, Science and Education case. The student teachers are expected to do their assessments in face-to-face sessions starting next week, a decision that was made by the Teachers College of Jamaica, TCJ. Among the concerns raised by the students is the fear of contracting COVID-19 while traveling to and from the school to do their exams. Principal at case, Dr. Derek Deslandes, says the students will have to take the necessary precaution to protect themselves while traveling.
And I think if we do that, they'll be safe. Our students travel all the time throughout the COVID period without any difficulty. So I understand the concerns, but the reality is that our students are traveling. They're not locked away at home, not doing anything. They're on the road and they're traveling. So it can't be that when you're supposed to travel for an exam, it's no problem. When in fact you're traveling all the time to do your business, to go to town, to do whatever. So I think we just have to tamp it down a little bit and just recognize that we have to try to go back to some kind of normality.
Dr. Deslandes says the school has been accommodating students who have difficulties traveling to and from the institution to do their exams. The students cited financial constraints for not opting to board at the institution, but Dr. Deslandes says the school has been understanding and has not been hard and fast for payment.
We have not basically insisted on students paying upfront for the boarding requirements. In fact, we have facilitated the boarding. The reality is that, as with most institutions, many of our students have not paid tuition system since September, and we have not prevented them from coming to school. So the fear around the cost of the boarding for the period of time is unfounded because we have not basically turned back anybody with that kind of challenge.
Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the school, which is a multidisciplinary institution, has been utilizing both online and face-to-face classes under the protocols implemented by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
Still on education, Portfolio Minister Favour Williams says attention will be placed on students sitting exams this year. Among the ministry's special learning intervention plans are classes in small groups and a mobile student support unit. Grade 6 students are set to do the primary exit profile ability test next month.
The results of the ability test in February will give us a sense of the potential rather than just the academic performance of our children. It will alert us as to what our children are capable of doing, so we can adequately prepare them for the performance task and the curriculum-based tests, which are based on the National Standards Curriculum and come later in May 2021. So, Madam Speaker, the focus between now and February 23, 2021 will be on getting our students in a frame of mind to successfully sit the ability test.
And we now take a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll have much more when you return. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. 2 more persons have died from COVID-19 in Jamaica. The deceased are a 69-year-old woman from Hanover and a 71-year-old man from St. James, whose death was previously under investigation. Meanwhile, Jamaica recorded 92 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday. This has pushed the country's case count to 13,852. Kingston and St. Andrew recorded most of the new cases with 28, followed by St. James with 17. The Health Ministry says the number of persons hospitalized with the respiratory illness has increased to 98. 7 are critically ill. And Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says he is in discussion with stakeholders in the tourism industry to address testing of visitors. Now, speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, Dr. Tufton pointed to the new travel procedures for persons returning to the UK and Canada. They are required to submit a negative PCR test 96 hours before landing.
Given the issues affecting our own testing processes for public health interventions, the ministry has assessed that the testing for travel could not be accommodated by the government's national lab system. Therefore, in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Ministry of Health and Wellness initiated early discussions with the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, and the Canadian High Commission in Jamaica to accelerate the following. 1, mobilize private labs to support testing for persons who must travel, negotiate testing of samples using collaboration with overseas labs, establish partnerships with private labs and regional labs to expand capacity for testing, and support the private sector to ensure effective use of testing within the country. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the Ministry has approved 8 private labs for antigen testing and 1 private lab for PCR testing. These approvals have sought to strengthen the level of testing within the country and to provide the greater access to citizens who require testing for reasons outside of clinical and public health actions.
The tourism sector has reacted to Tuesday's news that the U.S. government is to issue new COVID-19 measures. The measure will require international airline passengers to present negative COVID-19 tests before boarding flights to America. The new COVID-19 measures to be issued by the U.S. government goes into effect on January 26. The UK and Canada have similar measures in place. Senior strategist in the tourism ministry, Delano Seavright, says the tourism sector is now entering a period of uncertainty and a decline in arrivals.
The U.S. is the biggest tourism market for us, and even though we're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic, the tourists that we have coming, most of them are coming out of the United States. So it will certainly act as a deterrent, one, but at the same time we understand the circumstances faced globally. And after the Canada and the UK headed in a direction of requiring tests, we had expected that in short order the US would have followed.
He says urgent steps are being taken to increase Jamaica's COVID-19 testing capacity.
We have been working closely with the Ministry of Health, the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, other partners, to ramp up testing capacity as quickly as we possibly can in the private sector to be able to meet the demand in the coming weeks.
And the government of Philippines has included Jamaica on a travel restriction list due to the presence of the new COVID-19 variant. Filipino presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said he announced yesterday that travelers from Jamaica, Pakistan, Luxembourg and Oman will not be allowed to enter the Philippines between today and Friday. Now, Filipinos from these areas can return home but will need to complete the 14-day quarantine regardless of a negative COVID-19 test result. Now, following reports of new COVID-19 variants, the Philippines suspended all flights from the UK on December 24, then later expanded that list. Investigations are now underway into the recovery of 4 stolen goats in St. Mary. According to the police, a report was made by the owner. The suspected thieves were caught with the animals in bushes near a makeshift slaughterhouse in Highgate on Tuesday. And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we'll look at the new variant of the virus that causes COVID-19.
So the spike is a little thing sticking off the surface of the virus. There's a lot of them, and they use it to attach to the cells in your body to cause infection. So if there is a change in the spike that it uses to attach, then it affects its ability to attach. And for the B117, it actually enhances the ability of the spike to attach to these cells. Some of those mutations or changes in the structure of the spike for the variant compared to the predominant strains of a novel coronavirus are in some key areas that affect how the virus attaches and infects our body.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. Clean hands with soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Cover nose and mouth when coughing. Avoid close contact with anyone with cold or flu-like symptoms.
In news overseas, the U.S. House of Representatives is poised to impeach Donald Trump for an unprecedented second time. The process has moved quickly, with just 1 week to go before he is scheduled to leave office. More from the CNN.
After today, President Donald Trump could stand as the first president in U.S. history impeached twice.
I hope that people perceive this not as a partisan act, but as an act of principle.
On Tuesday, the House passed a resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. But Pence, in a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, said he does not believe that such a course of action is in the best interest of our nation or consistent with our Constitution. So House Democrats will move toward a vote today on one article of impeachment against Trump, incitement of insurrection over last Wednesday's deadly Capitol attack. Trump has denied responsibility for the riot and, traveling to Alamo, Texas, near the U.S.-Mexico border Tuesday, leaned on a familiar refrain.
The impeachment hoax is a continuation of the greatest and most vicious witch hunt in the history of our country and is causing tremendous anger and division and pain.
Multiple House Republicans think otherwise.
To allow the President of the United States to incite this attack without consequences is a direct threat to the future of this democracy. For this reason, I will vote to impeach this president tomorrow.
After staying in lockstep during the first impeachment vote in 2019, Republican sources indicate to CNN 10 to 20 lawmakers from the president's own party could vote against him this time.
To news and sports now, one medical expert has made a radical call for all competitive sport to return on the island amidst the ongoing community spread of COVID-19. Jordan Fort tells us more.
Consultant neurosurgeon Dr. Roger Hunter speaking on Hits 92 FM's Sports Grill on Monday. Dr. Hunter is singing a different tune from a number of his colleagues, saying the Jamaican government has missed a trick in not having competitive sport being played on the island. He says the sports industry has suffered unfairly throughout the pandemic.
The Ministry of Health with the figures can tell Jamaica why is it that the sporting fraternity has had virtually no deaths from coronavirus, and yet they have been asked to pay an unfair price.
The spinal surgeon, who has lectured and taught at the University of the West Indies, Leeds University and the University of Liverpool, says it is counterproductive on the part of the government to stop competitive sport.
Sports people are the fittest you can find. They are thin and sinewy. They don't have any fat. Yes, some of them may have asthma, hole in the heart. Some of them may have eczema. Some of them may have migraine. But the records and the evidence show that there have been virtually no Jamaican children killed from coronavirus.
As for the fear of young sportsmen and women contracting the virus and taking it home and infecting their parents or grandparents?
This was studied in the United States. They showed that the kids, when they reopened their school, while Jamaica locked, they reopened their school in August. And the studies show that they were not super spreaders. The youngsters can sanitize, gargle, mouthwash. Mouthwash is very important. If they're mouthwashing, brush their teeth at least 3 times a day, then they're going to reduce the coronavirus load in their body. Having hot baths and steam baths, that's going to reduce the coronavirus. Taking vitamin C, vitamin D, and vitamin E.
The internationally accomplished neurologist insists that the country could have benefited financially from welcoming sportspersons from cold countries to train and compete in Jamaica since the outbreak of the virus. There's been limited competitive sporting events staged in Jamaica since the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed on the island in March. Jordan Fort, TVJ Sports.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.